SMS questions. If you don't do the service very often, you may not even have run into these, but we do have people sending stuff in through cell phones. If you go to the provider site under documentation, you'll see the SMS reference manual, and this will give you a bunch of screenshots. I got to redo my screenshots. But you'll notice that whenever the chat window comes up, you'll see SMS question all over the place. SMS question, SMS question, SMS question. If it says SMS question has left the room, that doesn't mean that they've disconnected. That just means that you received the signal and the signal is no longer being sent. It's not, the message itself has not left. There's a URL at the bottom of the metadata. You click on that URL. That opens up a window in your browser, which is the Mozio Text Librarian, which is where you answer those questions from. So you type your answer here. If there is text to speak or anything, there's actually a little, I'm not sure what's shown up there. I think it must be, it might not be just because there's a little translate button if they do like BRB and LOL. You click the translate button, it'll translate into English for you from text speak, which is kind of cool. It'll keep track of how many characters you do. Whenever you're done, you just click send my answer, and then go back to the chat window. So here's what it looks like whenever it's all typed up. Then you go back to your chat window, close your chat window out. If you're working on a text question, leave that chat window open because the SparkRef software is going to see that as an active session whenever it's rotating those questions around. So that's just one of the things. Keep that window open until you're done with the Mozio window, and then go back and close out the chat window. Okay? Alrighty. So we have an hour and a half. That should be enough to get through. We might race through some stuff. I'm going to have to recalibrate my whole thing because technically right now I would be at lunch in my brain, and then I would come back this afternoon and do the rest of the session. So go back to here from the beginning. Okay. So here are the soft skills for your advanced virtual reference training for Know It Now. There's the email. If you do need to contact me, the easiest way for you is to go through Amy and make her deal with it. But if you do need to contact me, support@knowitnow.org is probably the best way to get in contact with us if it's not a vital question that you need answered right away. The reason is that both Brian Lesh and I have access to this email address, so that we can, if it's a technical question, a software question, he can handle it. If it's more of a scheduling, policy, procedural sort of question, then I can handle it. But that's probably the most efficient way to get a hold of us. What we're going to look at the rest of this morning then is we do have statewide databases, so we're going to talk about the statewide databases, but we also have Google and Wikipedia. What I like to do is talk about Google and Wikipedia so everybody sort of knows what I would like you to know about Google and Wikipedia, how to use them, how not to use them, and some different uses for them. We're also going to talk about pranks and problems. We could probably spend 2 hours just on that. And then we're also going to look at some customer service skills, and during that portion I want to share some actual transcripts with you, and I think it's important to at least hear a couple of them out loud. The good ones sound like a conversation across the reference desk, and the ones that aren't so good sound like blink, 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 thank you for using our service. So that the conversational skills you have at the in-person desk are transferable in many ways to a virtual chat as well. So, one thing to remember too, whenever you're on Know It Now, you are part of a posse. I think a lot of people think of Know It Now as that terminal or that piece of software that sits on their desk, and that's the be-all and end-all of Know It Now. You have a whole network of other librarians all around the state that answer questions. That's sort of why I mentioned the broadcast message this morning, so that if you are stumped or you do have a question, there is a posse out there to help you out. Don't hesitate to pick their brains, ask questions, ask me. You don't have to go it alone. If you get those stumper questions, use those broadcasts too. Once again, there's a wide range of everybody, and we have some great librarians in Ohio. Feel free to take advantage of them. We also have some benchmarks and best practices. This short URL will give you links to the RUSA guidelines, to the OLC Public Library Core Competencies. So if you sort of want to gauge what you should be doing as a librarian, this is a nice way to sort of gauge yourself against other people in the profession. There's also a link to the PDF for Seeking Synchronicity. Has anybody ever looked at the Seeking Synchronicity report from OCLC? It's an interesting look at virtual reference, both from the user and the librarian side. Marie Radford from Rutgers and Lynn Conway from OCLC put it together a couple of years ago. It's sort of an interesting look and gives you some good ideas about what expectations are and what other services are doing and that sort of thing. Okay, so first of all, we're going to talk about Googling and Wikiing, getting the most out of two of the internet's most popular sites. Just to give you an idea of who is behind these sorts of things, Google has 70 offices in 40 countries all around the world, and they are for-profit corporations. They are not out necessarily to make your life easier, they are out to make money. If your life is easier by using them, that helps make them money. But they're out for a profit. The Wikimedia Foundation, which is responsible for Wikipedia, is on one floor in a nondescript office building in San Francisco, and they are a non-profit corporation. So they are 501c3, I think it is. But they tout the fact that their one floor holds their 27 employees and offers plenty of room for them. So they are a much smaller operation overall. The big thing where they come in is all those volunteer Wikipedia editors spread all around the world. We'll get into those in just a little bit. Their operating revenue is also quite different. That's Google's revenue from last year. The $11 billion there is the public library operating revenues for all the libraries in the United States. And then that $34 million is the operating expenses for operating revenue for the Wikimedia Foundation. So Google has probably changed the way we do business in libraries and expectations I think that people have of us probably more than almost anything else out there. A lot of people just think that I'll Google it. If I want to find something, I'll go to Google Library. What we should think of as librarians is not just Google it, but to think of all the different aspects of Google that are out there. Use them as individual tools. Don't see Google as one monolithic sort of thing. Another thing to keep in mind is that Google is a constant work in progress. If you know how to do something today, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to know how to do it tomorrow or next year. Last year, I did a presentation on Google and used this screenshot here, and everything was all nice and arrayed down to one side and all that kind of stuff, and well, you can forget all that because it's not there anymore now. Neither is Google Reader or their translated form pages or their iGoogle, all gone. This is what it looks like now. It's they have a bar across the top. You have to know where to look for the stuff because they don't have it nicely arrayed along the left-hand column now. And they also have their pictures and their knowledge graph over there, although I'm sort of torn on whether that's much use actually. But you have to know what to look for and how to find it. Another thing to keep in mind is that Google tries to outsmart you and wants to know and already knows where you're doing your search from. So a search for parking laws done in Cleveland and a search for parking laws done in Cincinnati are going to retrieve two completely different sets of results. So if you tell somebody on a chat, well, you can search for Google using this and this and this. If there's anything that is even remotely locally relevant for them, they're going to get different search results than you would. That's why it's much better to provide them with individual results rather than the search results from a Google search. I've seen people do that, and I think it will even change it if you give them a URL. So it's gonna know where that search is being done from. So keep that in mind. You can change this location. You can change the location if you want to. There's a little arrow there you pull down. I will often set it to United States to get the broadest possible search. But if you are looking for a particular area, you can change the city that you're doing it from right there. I want to start out with Google Images and sort of go through and see what we can find with particular resources. Are any of you aware, if you click on the little camera in the images, that you can upload a file and search by file? That's kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is, my family recently took a trip to San Francisco, and I snapped this picture of a house on California Street in San Francisco, and so I didn't know what the building was, just thought it looked cool, snapped it as the cable car was going past like this. So what I did was I uploaded that image. I knew it was in San Francisco on California Street, so it used the image, used those search terms. I clicked on visually similar images, and lo and behold, there's a picture of the same building from a different location that somebody else has taken a picture of. I click on that, find out it's the James Clare Flood Mansion, home of So I said, okay, I know it's the James Clare Flood Mansion, so what else can I find out about James Clare Flood and Mansion utilizing Google? So And there's the tagline along the bottom there, James Clutterbuck Mansion, home of the Pacific Union Club, California Street, Nob Hill, San Francisco. So, we go back to Google. If you go back to images, you can choose the color of the images that you want, the predominant color, by going into the search tools, and then this will be color, and then there's a screen that looks like, a little window that looks like that, any color, full color, black and white, transparent, or all those other different colors. So I set it to black and white, and found this picture of the mansion from the 1906 earthquake, all hollowed out and everything. You can also choose the various colors. You can use that as a way if somebody comes into your library and says, I had a woodworking book that had a red cover on it last week, and could you help me find it? At least with this, you can type in woodworking books, go to images, click on red, and at least get a universe of possible selections of woodworking books with red covers on them. So it may not be the one they're looking for, but at least it gives you a way to at least address that question, where in the past it'd be like, yeah, the red books are over there. That's like, I can't help you out, I'm sorry. But at least this gives you a way that you might be able to narrow down the searches that they might possibly need. Here is the just the regular web search again, the flood of memories. So there's the from the San Francisco newspaper, so that gives you a little bit more information there. But you go into news, and if you click on search tools again, click on the date, that would be the date, the second one there. So you're looking for anytime, all there. The one at the bottom is archives. This actually provides you with a newspaper from March 14th, 1889, full text, and there's the Bonanza King is dead, James W. Flood demise in Heidelberg, gives his obituary from his death in Germany. So you can do, the archives are surprisingly, there's a lot more there than what I expected, and a lot more older stuff than I expected too. So if you're looking for contemporary things, maybe you have somebody comes in who's looking for information on the Civil War or something, you might actually be able to find some newspaper accounts from around the time of the Civil War in the archives on Google. Also in books, never underestimate the help that the digitized books can give you. There have been questions that I've gotten on Know It Now that the only place I was able to find the answer was in the digitized books on Google Books, the ones that at least give you a preview. I remember one time somebody asked a question on the history of a particular state park in Ohio, and I said, well, did you look at their website? Did you look at this? Yeah, I looked there, Went to Google Books, lo and behold, there was a book on the history of state parks in Ohio. There was a section on there, who started it, a little brief history of the park itself, when all that sort of thing. And that was the only place I was able to find that sort of narrative history of it. So here's a fact, fancy, and fable, a new handbook for ready reference from 1892, talking about the Bonanza Kings. Evidently were big enough to warrant an entry in their ready reference manual from 1889. And patents. Patents come in handy for not just people who come in the library and say, I need some patent information. Think of it as a way, what I like to think of as a way is, there's two major things. The students that come in and have their inventor reports, sometimes it's the only place you can find information if they've actually patented something, and I swear that teachers find the most obscure inventors whenever they give those assignments out. So this is at least one way. My son had to do a big presentation on an inventor, so he picked Steve Jobs, so we went to the patents. When I typed in Steve Jobs, found one of the early Apple patents. I got a picture of the early Apple computer design, and he used that on his panel whenever he was doing his stuff. Another thing, if you're just making displays in the library, it's a great place if you have like steampunk or Victorian era or anything like that. The older patent images really evoke that era, so if you're doing something on steampunk fiction, this might be a great image for your display board whenever you're trying to think of it. It sort of evokes that whole Victorian era sort of thing. So don't just think of it as a patent database, don't just think that you have to ask a patent question to get some use out of it. And so after all that, I think we need a cookie. So you can go into more. They have a recipe search that you can limit things by ingredients, cooking time, calorie count, all that sort of thing too. So it's a nice way to, if somebody's looking, I need a chocolate chip cookie recipe, but I don't want any nuts in it. This is a way that you can utilize Google that way If you do want to learn a little bit more how to search well on Google, the Power Searching with Google class really comes in handy. There's a basic and an advanced. I took the basic one, that's where I found out about the color searching and the books and all that sort of thing. The advanced one I started and I got stumped on like the second exercise. So they do really put you through your paces, and there's a video component, and then there's an exercise, and then they give you answers about how to search it. And what it does is it utilizes all the different tools of Google so you get an idea of how all those things can work in concert with each other. Maps, books, paths, all that sort of stuff sort of feeds into, they'll give you a question, and you have to sort of use all those different tools in different ways, and it really is a nice way to get an overview of what it has to offer. So that's Google. Wikipedia. One of the major concerns with Wikipedia is that anybody can edit anything, so nothing is worth anything on Wikipedia. They have started to address some of that with their lock system. So there it goes from fully protected to protected by the office. I personally like the word semi-protected. Semi-protected. But what that means is that you have to have an account. You can't just do it anonymously. You have to have edited something in the past so many months or so many weeks. And so it's a way for them to sort of, okay, you have to be an active editor. You have to be doing something. You can't just come in and do it. Those articles that have those would show up in the upper right-hand corner there. You see the little silver lock up there in the corner. That is a silver lock. The one beside it, so you have the silver lock. The one beside it, if you click on that button, it will actually read the article to you. So there's an audio component. The little gold star means that it's been voted on by the editors, and that this is one of the better, more complete articles in Wikipedia. So you have that sort of like standard too. So you can see there's gold stars and green circles and that sort of thing. So it goes from the best to good and sort of works its way down. You can also take a look at the talk pages. Talk pages are the discussions that go on behind the scenes among all the editors for what's going to be included in the article, what needs to be changed, what needs to be taken out, what needs to be revised, all that sort of thing. And this is the table of contents for the talk pages. This isn't the table of contents for the article. This is the table of contents for the discussion page. So if you want to see some interesting discussions that go on behind the scenes, this is where you want to take that. Just as a matter of curiosity, does anybody edit articles on Wikipedia? Okay. These are some of the ones that I've done. I thought it was important to at least have an account to go on to at least see how it works from behind the scenes. It's really interesting for breaking news sorts of things. The Olingito is the animal that they just announced at the Natural History Museum just like last month, I think it was. I wanted to see how fast Wikipedia would have an article on the Olingito. It actually started out spelled like this, but then as more information came out in print, then everybody realized it was spelled like that. So what I did was I actually went in, did a redirect from this page here, so even if you spell it incorrectly, it'll still get you to the right page in Wikipedia. I added outdoor drama in Chillicothe. That was an interesting one because I saw that they had a Tecumseh in popular culture, and they didn't have the outdoor drama listed, so I went in and added it and gave a link to where you buy tickets and the seating chart of the auditorium and all that sort of thing, the outside seating area. Within minutes, somebody took it off, said that it was self-promotion because it only linked to where the theater was, and that I needed third-party references to include it. And my first reaction was, wow, that was quick. My second reaction was, okay, it needs third-party references. I found Alan Eckert's obituary where it talks about it, found where it won some awards, stuck it back in, and so far it's stayed in there. But that was a really eye-opening experience. My thought was, who's checking up with the Tecumseh article in Wikipedia? So that was one of the interesting things to see. Like, once again, that whole behind-the-scenes thing I think is important for librarians to know so you can actually explain it to patrons. So some recommended uses, of course, as a referral tool. I think the further readings, the bibliographies, the external links are really come in handy. This is actually the bottom of an article that I use whenever somebody asks me a question on Know It Now about maglev trains, those ones that float on the magnetic waves, the trains do that. There were some really good links there, and that sort of got me started. If you don't know where to turn, this is a nice way to sort of do behind the scenes. And once again, you don't have to share it with the patron. You're not going to say, you don't have to send them the link to the Wikipedia article. You don't have to tell them you're going to search it. Behind the scenes, you can go and do this, go to some of the other sites. These might be the ones you want to share with them rather than Wikipedia article itself, but this makes your job much easier too. You can assess the authority of those links, and you can have a place to start. Popular culture. Popular culture is a great use of Wikipedia because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. If somebody wants to know the discography of Bruno Mars, Wikipedia might be a good place to start. Many of these will link to things like Billboard, MTV, all the major sources you would check anyway. So why not start here and then branch off from there? This particular one has his chart positions in the U.S., Australia, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Ireland, all in one-stop shop. Why reinvent the wheel? This is a 14-page article on Wikipedia on the first pilot episode of The Walking Dead. Once again, why reinvent the wheel? And it's probably going to be linking to IMDb and all the sources you check anyway. Once again, check those references, those external links, see where they did. But it's a 14-page article on one television episode on one television series. So it's a good place to start for that kind of stuff. Language study. If you don't have a lot of resources in your library for different languages, with the different Wikipedias will give you some more lengthy texts to work with. Each of the language versions is not a machine translation of the English Wikipedia. It's actually, each of the Wikipedias are written by people who speak or study those languages. So for instance, here's the Old English article on Barack Obama. You'll see it's fairly small. Here's the one in Finnish. It's a little bit more lengthy. And here's the one in Arabic. And left to right as well as right to left. You can also, well, what did that say? Getting a local perspective on things too is a good idea. Here's the new president of Iran. This is 20 printed pages on the English Wikipedia. If you look at the Farsi version, it's 37 pages, along with bibliographies and all that kind of stuff. You can then, if you don't speak Farsi, how many people here speak Farsi? I do. You can use Google Translate, translate.google.com, to get a rough English version of that article. And chances are that's going to provide you with more names, more dates, more places to search. You can then use that as a place to continue your search then elsewhere. You also, they have an entire article on his presidential election. And that in the English Wikipedia is fairly short, and I don't even think that one shows up. There's no article on the English Wikipedia for the Iranian presidential election. So if somebody's looking for current events, for a local perspective, Wikipedia might be a good place to start your search as well too. Once again, you don't necessarily want to end your search there, but it can be a very good place to start. Local perspective. Columbus Metropolitan Library has their own Wikipedia article. Do you know if Columbus Metro staff update the Wikipedia article? It's probably a good idea to at least know who is updating it and why.
I would say either the marketing department or the staff at GHC.
I was at another training one time and I brought up that library's Wikipedia article and everybody looked at each other. I didn't know we had a Wikipedia article. And we looked at the edit history and nobody recognized anybody's name. So a lot of libraries already have a Wikipedia article that isn't necessarily updated by their own staff. Once again, it's also a nice way. I've heard of libraries also using their own local resources, local history resources, and adding to Wikipedia, and then linking to those resources at their library for more information. So it's a way to sort of direct people, because those Wikipedia articles are going to be coming up right at the top of the Google search results. If you can sort of steer people to library resources, that might be a nice way to do that. And if you are interested in editing them, Wikipedia does a nice job of providing a lot of cheat sheets and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so just to tie it all together for an actual question that was on Know It Now, can I have a quote from the inventor of the car, Carl Benz? We start out with the Wikipedia article in English on Carl Benz. Click on the German Wikipedia article. Look at the web links. Lo and behold, there's a link to his autobiography, Einzelmann. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. There's a link to his autobiography. That goes to here. It's all in German. Say, well, I still need a quote from him. Use Google Translate to translate from the German to the English. Tuff, 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 ein Word, groß, ein Word as well. So there you go. Quick and dirty intro to Google and Wikipedia. Any questions? Yes?
So would you give that answer so the patron do you explain your process? Like,
You can. I
Or
would.
do you just give them choo, 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 and how do they cite that?
You would want to, I think you wouldn't necessarily have to go through the whole thing, but you say, oh, I found his autobiography, here's a link to his autobiography, and you can search through and find some quotes if you want to, and if you use Google, if you don't speak German, here's how to use Google Translate, and you can get some English versions of it. So, but that's the thing, if you want quotes from Carl Benz, they're going to be in German because the guy was German. So that's one thing I don't think, when people ask those kinds of questions, I don't even think they think of that.
Yeah.
My teacher told me I need quotes from Carl Benz, that sort of thing. Yes?
Talking along the lines, it's not a question, of the Google updates, I just saw that part of the new Chrome update is you can right-click on an image to do an image search.
Oh,
Wherever
excellent.
you are on the internet, if you're on Chrome.
Oh.
I'm super excited to try
Oh,
that.
that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's through Chrome itself.
Mhm.
Oh, cool. I'll try that out. Okay, so we go from Google and Wikipedia to the Ohio Web Library database. I'm hoping that everybody's familiar with the Ohio Web Library. OhioWebLibrary.org is the patron interface. If you bring up their resources, you'll see that there are a list of resources. If you click on the little plus signs, you do get descriptions of them, and those descriptions often have tutorials. So if you want to share those with patrons who want to give a little bit more in-depth searching or want to know, or if you want to use it as a staff development tool, you can do that. We do have a proxy server that they have set up for us at kin.oplin.org. kin.oplin.org. That's the one you want to use during a session to search for. That Oplin database canned message that I showed you earlier actually talks about. I'm going to send you something from the Ohio Web Library. If you want to search afterwards, use, and it gives the OhioWebLibrary.org address. They don't want us to give out kin.oplin.org because it's a proxy server that's set up just for us, but it's the same resources that they have access to, the patrons have access to through the Ohio Web Library. The reason you want to use kin.oplin.org is if you search there, send them a link through there, they'll click the link, they put in their zip code, they get taken to what you sent them. If you use OhioWebLibrary.org to search and send that link, they may or may not have to put in their zip code, they may or may not have to put in their library card, they may or may not get what you sent them, simply because the way the URLs are set up on OhioWebLibrary.org versus the proxy server. The proxy server has all the routing and stuff into the URLs and that sort of thing. Some of them would work the same, but it's just easier to get in the habit of using kin.oplin.org during your sessions whenever you're doing that. Same information, same databases, but just a different way to get into them. Some of the major ones, of course, are the EBSCO hosts, Biography Reference Bank, Science Online, and all the different World Book versions. But let's look at a couple of those just in a little bit more depth. Just to jog your memories, Masterfile Premier, 1,700 full-text periodicals going back to 1975. They also have consumer reports up to the current issue, so if somebody is needing information, I need a new refrigerator, I need a new lawnmower, I need something like that. I've seen some of those just recently, as a matter of fact. You can search an EBSCO host, get the full text article in PDF, and send them to it. Either email them from the EBSCO database or send them the link to the resource from the permanent link. And there's the PDF versions up to the current date. So that comes in really handy. Actually, I've used this a number of times myself too. So I know that the consumer reports are often sort of behind the desk and in tatters and all that sort of thing. This is a nice way to get people nice, fresh URLs, even at the in-person desk too. This is a nice way to utilize that. Academic Search Premier, if they need sort of a higher academic level. These also go back to 1975, 4,600 full-text journals. We are extremely lucky to have this sort of resource in Ohio with the databases. There are a lot of state virtual reference services that do not have access to statewide databases, and it makes their jobs much harder. This comes in really handy. Biography Reference Bank is always a good idea for anybody. I need information on Magellan, I need information on Hernando de Soto, that sort of thing. This is always at least a good first stop. And we have the American and English Literature full text. This is a nice way if somebody needs, I need a poem on sunflowers. This is a nice database to use for, you can search by keyword in the poetry collection to get information on that. It's always important, I mentioned it earlier too, that always right-click that persistent link on the database articles that you're trying to send and copy the shortcut and then send that to the patrons. Science Online, I mentioned, doesn't change its URL browser, or its browser URL at all. If you copy that browser, if you send that to the patron, you're going to get them sent back to the front page all the time. Unfortunately, it's always called something different in all the different databases. In Science Online, it's record URL. There's permalink, permanent link, bookmark this article. Everybody calls it something different, but just look for those persistent links somewhere in the article itself. Copy that and send that to the patron. Okay. Any questions on these statewide databases? Like I said, we're really lucky to have them. Make sure you utilize them because I know they pay a lot of money for those things. Yes.
Can we use CML databases?
You could. The only problem is if you send a link to, say, somebody from Cleveland, they're not going to be able to access that. If you do look up something, and that's a very good question. It's come up a number of times, even on some of the virtual reference service listservs and things like that. The way I see it is, and I think that a lot of way that other people see it is, that if you are helping a patron, they are your patron. So you have access to whatever databases you have. It's as if somebody came up to you at the desk inside your library, as far as I'm concerned. And you can use that. What you don't want to do probably is send them links to your databases because they're probably not going to be able to access them. But if it's like an article or something, you can copy and paste that article, or if it gives you the option to email, you can email them the article, that sort of thing. So just be careful. Yes, you can utilize them, but be careful how you use them and how you share those with the patients so they have access to the information you're trying to get them.
Well, that's kind of a switch. Well, I don't know about a switch, but a clarification. We've always been told to stay far away from CML databases.
Well, I think probably the reason for that too is that there is that sort of problem with sharing them with people and having access because they can't access them. I mean, don't give them access to your database and then say you can log in with this. Here's don't do that. But I think as far as providing information or things to search, you can use them, but it's just easier to use the statewide databases that we have access to because of that that whole sharing sort of thing. Does that help at all?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I kind of
Oh,
actually
go ahead.
got the opposite early on impression that we were really supposed to focus on some of those databases because of the information. This is what we want to use. We know we trust this information, therefore don't go outside of that. So a lot of times I'll go to that first and I can't find anything. I start getting frustrated, the customer's frustrated, and I end up finding something somewhere else, thinking, man, I'm just doing a bad job with this because I'm not using what they tell us to use. So I kind of have a lot of confusion with that.
And that's what.
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I have that Ohio Web Library page bookmarks.
Yeah.
And that's the first place I start. I think the problem gets into, if we had somebody who wanted a diagram for a car, I know it now, then would we go to ALLDATA because that's something that we pay for, here in
Right.
Franklin.
And I have heard, I mean, individual libraries will probably set up their own. I mean, I can't, tell everybody, here's what you have to do. I mean, I think that different libraries will also have different policies and procedures in connection with that as well. That's one of the nice things that we have, those statewide databases. At least everybody has access to at least a core collection sort of thing.
I think the analogy you made that if someone walks in your building and you're serving them at the desk, if they're from Indiana and they don't have a library card and their car broke down, I'm going to get on all the
Right, right.
So I wouldn't say,
right.
no, you're not from Ohio.
Well,
There's a garage down the street.
That's another good point too, Summer. If we're serving somebody on Know It Now in Akron,
Right.
they are potentially, they could be a card holder. for
Right,
CML,
because they are an
Because
Ohio
they're
resident.
an Ohio resident.
Right.
I'll have to clarify again with Nate, for everybody.
And
I will-
feel free to share with me what you find out too, because I think this is sometimes a moving target too. So I think that
Okay.
it's a really good question. Okay, so now we come to handling the tricky questions with dealing with problem patrons and patrons with problems. Contrary to popular belief, you don't just get pranks on Know It Now. At least the ones that are coded that way, consistently over the years, it's been around 3% that have been coded as pranks by the librarians. You'll see that not recorded there means that it was not recorded. It was not given a resolution code by the librarians. So even if you add those in, it's still not. At least it's still not the majority of them. But those are the ones that stick in your head. I still remember my very first session on Know It Now back in 2004. I evidently wasn't being fast enough, and the patron swore a blue streak at me, and then logged off the thing. So I was like, oh, this should be fun. But those are the ones that stick in your brain. I mentioned earlier too that remember you're in charge of the sessions too. So you use the inappropriate file language 1 and inappropriate file language 2. They're there for your use. give them the warning. I do know that in reading some of the transcripts, sometimes it does seem that patrons don't really realize they're talking to a real person. I still think a lot of people still think they're talking to an artificial intelligence engine, and that they're just on the computer, and it's like this website that magically chats with them and gives them answers. And if you do warn people sometimes to watch their language, that sort of thing, that sometimes they will, clean up their act. Other times they won't. Then you use message number 2 and you send them on their merry way. But remember, you're in charge of the situation. Don't put up with anything at the virtual desk that you wouldn't put up with at the in-person desk. Sort of use that as a basic guide. But what you have to sort of think about is what isn't a prank and what is a prank. Yeah. One thing that I do, did it bring them along? If you go to the provider site, you'll see at the very top there's a link for our crisis call guidelines. Those are the kinds of calls where I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to commit suicide, my boyfriend's beating me up, all those sorts of horrible social things that happen out there. They don't happen all that often on Know It Now. We seem to get a spate of them every once in a while. And since I've been doing it both as a frontline librarian and as a coordinator since 2004, I've maybe had to deal with maybe like 3 or 4 of them myself personally. I've had other librarians that, as coordinator, they let me know things that we've dealt with. But it's much better to know how you're going to deal with those things ahead of time than to get one and then go, we don't handle those kinds of questions. Come back and have a question I can help you with. Goodbye. There's no problem with being a compassionate human being. I'm sorry to hear that. Let me see if there's anything I can help you out. They do at least provide a zip code, whether it's their real zip code or not, you don't know. They do provide a zip code. Let me see if I can find any resources in your area. If they're, I'm living on the street, or I'm in the library and I'm living on the street, provide those sorts of local resources that libraries have always provided. A lot of libraries in the past would keep that binder behind the reference desk for all the local social service organizations and homeless shelters and all that sort of stuff. A lot of people still do. You can at least provide things like that. Sorry to hear that. If you do get one that sort of even goes above and beyond that you think requires attention by me or by Brian, don't hesitate to let us know. If you just disconnect from a patron and you go, you're done with it, and you go, that sort of thing, let us know right away. If it's a suicide call, if the person signs off, I'm going to go kill myself now. If you want to let us know, we can take a look at it. We can track down the IP address. We have to do some machinations with the software and stuff, but that's what I have Brian for. But if it needs to be followed up with, you can follow up with it. If it ends up that it's coming from a school or something, we have maybe, since I've been coordinator, maybe like twice we've contacted the schools and said, this person contacted us, it sounds like they need some help. Could you find out, and provide something if they need it, the guidance counselor or whatever. And if it's a prank, put the hammer of God down on them and tell them never to do it again because it was very upsetting and it's not what the service is for and that sort of thing. So we can do that sort of stuff. So, but I think it's much easier to do those things at the point of contact as the librarians. Remember that I've had people ask me too, do I call the police, do I do this, do I that? Remember, on here, they can remain anonymous if they want to. They can give a false name. They don't have to give their real zip code. It just has to be an Ohio zip code. They don't have to put in their email address. If they are at a Starbucks or a school or a library, that IP address is going to cover any number of terminals in the facility. So trying to track down individual people on individual terminals is sometimes almost impossible. But like I said, we can do it if we need to, but I think at least saying, I'm sorry to hear that, here's some local resources, at least a way to handle those sorts of crisis calls at that point of contact. Whether they're a prank or not, feel free to take them seriously and provide that sort of guidance. On the other hand, we have things like what is X? And X can be a body part or a bodily function or a sexual activity. We all know those are very popular on Know It Now. Another thing to keep in mind with these, though, is they may actually be legitimate questions as well. If you have a student who comes on and asks what is whatever, if they don't know what it means, they're certainly not going to ask their friends if they're using a word that they don't understand because they don't want to look uncool or whatever the current jargon is among their friends. They're not going to ask their school librarian that. They're not going to walk into a teacher's office or a public library and ask the kind of question. They can remain anonymous on Know It Now and ask what they want. As long as you're using authoritative resources to answer questions like that, I think we're well within our rights to answer questions like those. Our practicum student a couple semesters ago was getting a lot of questions like that, so she actually made us a teens and sex information pathfinder that you can get to from the provider site. All those sorts of questions are possible, real questions. It could also very well be that they want to see if the librarian will actually answer it for them. I found, it just recently we had seemed to be a spate of people asking for song lyrics from rap music. And of course there were, F and 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 F. That, all the colorful language that one finds in song lyrics. So I think one of those things is that they want to see if the librarian will look it up for them. They're asking for song lyrics, and you use an authoritative site for song lyrics, I think it's fine to share that. If that's what they're asking, we're supposed to provide information, that's the information they want, go ahead and share it with them. The other popular one is where do babies come from, and all its various and sundry permutations. I actually recommend using Science Online and sending them the information on human reproduction. I would probably recommend using sites that don't have a lot of images, just stay textual. But once again, it's going to be different too if you have a K through 8 or 9 through 12 or a college student or whatever. It could be that they do need information about human reproduction, but they don't know how to term the question too. That's like, I need information on where babies come from. Don't take those kinds of questions at face value. Make the patron work with you, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. Make the patron work with you. Do the reference interview. The reference interview is just as important on the virtual chat as it is at the in-person desk. Is this for a school assignment? Is this for, what class is this for? How much information did you need? Where else did you look? If it's a legitimate question, they'll help you out. They'll work through with you. If it's not, they'll get bored because they're having to work for it. All they want to do is log on, ask the question, and get the librarian to say, you can't ask questions like that, or we're going to send jackbooted thugs to your house and drag you out into the streets for asking questions like that and don't know. And you can almost hear the patron on the other end go, I made the librarian mad. If you make them work for it, that's a way to sort of weed out the pranks. I was talking to my wife one time about this, and she said, tell them whenever you do these trainings, think to the patron, I will relentlessly provide you with information whether you want it or not. So having that relentless reference tactic is a way to sort of weed those out. Make the patron work for it, and if they want it, they'll go along with it. If you have something that's all in capital letters, we automatically think now online that shouting. I'm always amazed. There's always somebody in the training sessions that says, "Oh yeah, my older, uncle or grandfather or whatever always types in capital letters online because it makes it easier to see." If they are saying things like, "I need help with a question, can you help me?" If they're having a regular chat that's in capital letters, don't necessarily assume that they're shouting. If they're saying things like, "Hurry up, my class is done," okay, then they're probably yelling at you. But don't necessarily assume if you see this question pop up on the service and it's all in capital letters, don't necessarily think that they're shouting at you. I've had things happen to me too where somebody will type all in capital letters and then it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my little brother typed that," or "I'm sorry, my turtle walked across the keyboard." I actually had somebody say, "My turtle walked across the keyboard one day," whenever that happened. "Oh, sorry about it." Yeah. And it still went on to be a regular, reference question, that sort of thing. But it's don't necessarily assume that that's the case, that they're shouting. And of course, the ever popular, "Give me the answer, tell me the answer, I just want the answer." I added this on here after a number of trainings. It always comes up. I think that, at least from my personal experience, it's okay if they're asking a question and you can provide them the answer, it's okay. My example that I usually use is whenever I was in the literature department, we would always get people come in asking, "I need a definition of this, I need a definition of this, I need a definition of this, I need a definition, I need a definition of this." So it was these long lists of definitions. What I would usually do is copy and paste the definition from one of the online dictionaries for the first one and say, "Well, here's the site that I used, here's how you search on there, why don't you go ahead and try that, and then if you have any other questions, feel free to come back." Same way with math questions. It's a godsend now that there are sites out there that you can put in equations and it will give you the step-by-step solutions to algebra problems and things like that now. Those are great. Wolfram Alpha, if you don't know wolframalpha.com, Wolfram Alpha is a great place that you can type in those, and it will actually give you, it will solve equations for you and graph them and all that sort of stuff. Showing them how to use those sites, taking them to them, using the Khan Academy, things like that, and say, oh, here's a really good video on how to divide by fractions, or here's a really good site on how to do, equations, that sort of thing. Provide them that sort of information. If they can insist that you give them the answer, my fallback position is usually that your teacher wouldn't like it if I gave you the answer. I'm sure he or she wants you to work through it. The other fallback position is I don't want to give you the wrong answer, and that's about all the farther you need to go with that. But of course, the background story is we don't want teachers to come to Know It Now saying, my student gave this answer on a test, and they said they got it from you, and why are you giving them the answer, and why are you giving them this was the wrong answer, this was not what we wanted. So just avoid all of that, and try and throw it back on the teachers and say, they wouldn't appreciate it, or I don't want to give you the wrong answer, and that sort of thing. Yes, you will still have people that go, just give it to me, give it to me, give it. I think you even mentioned that. And at some point you have to just diplomatically extricate yourself from that and say, here's a bunch of resources. You've gone through the reference interview. You've determined that these are going to help them out. At some point you're going to have to say, if you read through those, especially for things like literary criticism, I've seen questions on Know It Now like, what are the themes in Macbeth, or what are the symbols in Macbeth that symbolize death and resurrection in the context of da 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 da, and it's like, where do you go? But here's some literary criticism. Here's some good sites that are going to help you out. Here's Cliff Notes and Spark Notes to get you going. All that sort of stuff. But try and extricate yourself from those things whenever they just want the answer. Sometimes it's also, once again, it's also in context too. But something like, when did, Columbus discover America? It's like, okay, 1492. Here's the site, here's what it is, but if they just say, when did Columbus discover America, that still cries out for a reference interview. How much information did you just need the date? Did you need, is this for a class, or you're writing a report, you need biographical information on Columbus? Always work through a reference interview. It will save you time. The classic example is somebody told me one time that they got a question was, I need places near me that give diving lessons for my son. So the reference librarian ran off and found, well, here's a pool, and here's the times, and here's the prices. And then the patron came back, but after they had done all of that, said, oh, I'm sorry, I meant driving. I misspelled that. And they apologized for misspelling diving and driving. But the librarian, just dove right in. I guess that's applicable. But here's the resources for that. Always do that reference interview. It is always going to help you out. Usernames. Here's the usernames for one random day on Know It Now. My personal favorite is, I think, the I'm Too Awesome for a Name one, or Man Bear Pig. It's a toss-up between those two. Once again, the patron wants to get a rise out of the librarian. If they don't call attention to it and they have a legitimate question, ignore the username if you can. One of the bad things about the things that are like the UJ, SKJ, those take up so much room on the chat, it gets really annoying, but they can still technically be asking a real reference question that you can work through with them. Once again, I think that if it's a prank, make them work for it. Make them, don't just, play into their hand. Along those lines, here is and I'm not sure whether you might be able to read that one. This is one from Ozzy. I mentioned Ozzy earlier today. This is one that she handled that I think is just a wonderful example. She logs on, for those of you who can't see it. She says, hi, I'm Ozzy, a librarian. Sinclair, thanks for your question. And the question was, why can't I own a Canadian? And Ozzy says, hi, hello. I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you tell me more? So I want to know why I can't. Why I can't own a Canadian slave. It'll help me to know if this is for a class assignment, and if so, which class or subject is it for? So once again, make the patron work for you. There it is. Social studies or some blank like that. I'm happy to help you, but no swearing, please, otherwise I'll have to disconnect. There's the warning. That's her version of inappropriate file language 1. So she searches. She actually goes out and searches, and she comes back with the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, gives a link to the Constitution. The patron says, oh, you're that kind of librarian, how annoying, I'll blank it. And then Ozzy, I love it, she signs off with, thanks for using our service. So this is, once again, make them work for it. If it's a legitimate question, if this could have technically been, you know, a pro-con sort of, you know, debate scenario, you know, she makes them work for it, all that sort of stuff. But once again, use these also, if you get a prank question, use them as a way to hone your own reference skills. The patron doesn't care what answer you're going to give them. But why can't they own a Canadian slave? What resources could we provide them to tell them why they can't own a Canadian slave? If you get those questions, use it as a chance to think about the question yourself, what resources you can use. You could use a database, if you could use how you can search on Google, all those sorts of things. Use it as a professional development tool for yourself. And provide a relentless reference to the patrons, and if they don't want it, you've still gotten something out of it for yourself. We have additional resources on pranks and all those sorts of things on the provider site. If you do get somebody who's just bored, if they say, I'm in study hall and I'm bored, can I chat with you? Where are you? Where are you located? You can always hear them whenever they do that kind of stuff. If you do get a situation like that, you're more than welcome to use the board links. We have the board links. There's the URL, the short URL right there. What it is a collection of games and trivia sites and Bakelicious, and I'll show you Bakelicious in a second, and all these other things that they can do whenever they're bored in study hall, if they have a computer with them. What that does is that gives you a resource to send them. They've had a positive interaction with the librarian on Know It Now, and if they have a question in the future, hopefully they will come back and actually ask you for resources for their homework or a paper or whatever they're working on. But it provides you an out. You know, here's some stuff you might like to do. Bakelicious is actually where you can put a piece of bacon over top of any other website that's out there. It gives you the URL prefix to put on any website and automatically puts a piece of bacon over top of it. Just a goofy, stupid site. And the sites that are in those board links are from a presentation that a young adult services librarian gave from Seattle Public Library. One of the, I think it was the librarian at Twinsburg attended the webinar and shared that with me, and she said this was a really good idea. This is what she suggested for virtual reference with teens. If they're just bored, give them something to look at least. And Bakelicious was #1 on the list. So any questions, anything you want to share on pranks? Like I said, this is sort of the abbreviated session, so. Yes?
I had well, I'm assuming it was a teen, but she wanted someone to talk about life. And it wasn't a crisis, but she wanted to talk about life, so I gave her the crisis chat. And I always wondered, do you think they just told her to go away when she got there, or?
It could very well be. That's a possibility. Whenever you say, give me a little bit more information on, I'm not quite sure I understand.
Well, it was at night, but she was like, wanted someone to talk about life and life things and boyfriends and that kind of thing. And she kept talking to me, and I kept talking to her, and so I used one of the crisis ones is a chat, and one is a phone call.
Okay.
So I gave her the chat one, and I looked online for other chat ones where teens could talk about life, but I couldn't be sure they were safe.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's a good idea. If you stick at least with like the ones that are fairly like the hotlines and things like that, I think you're probably good. But you're absolutely right. I think that giving out the different chat rooms and stuff, and you just sort of yeah exactly.
As I was finding it, it was like, it doesn't matter what I find, you can't send it.
Right.
So it was just the one thing, but I just wondered if anybody else had that kind of question and what they did.
That's a good. That's actually good. So it sounds like she obviously wanted to talk to somebody. She didn't know who else to talk to, and that it wasn't really a reference question, but it was sort of a resource thing. I've never had sort of that sort of. I've had the things with like dating advice and things like that, and I've sent the articles on, here's some articles on relationships, and here's how dating, and some of those teen information sites will give you at least here's some tips on dating and that. So those sorts of things I think you can send. I think it's a good idea not to send the chat room link. So that's like you said.
To what extent is it okay though to like engage in conversation? And I guess I'm thinking, because I think about what we do in our libraries and how much we build relationships with our customers, and when we have teen customers, they will come in and we will talk to them about those things, or we'll listen to them and be that adult, caring community person for them. But it's so much more awkward in a chat
Right.
setting. So I don't know if that's kind of what you were getting at. I kind of would like to know what the limitations are, and what, as far as what we shouldn't do, or how far not to take a conversation like that.
Well, you definitely don't want to give, you know, I'm at the Gahanna Public Library, please come in and see me anytime, you know, that's probably, you don't want to probably go there. But I think that you actually brought up a good point. I think that, you know, here's how we deal with things at the library. My sort of go-to thing is always, how would you deal with this if somebody came up to you at the desk? And if you're comfortable, you know, sort of chatting that way, I think that that's fine. If the service isn't busy, if you have some you know, time that you can spend on that, you know, I wouldn't necessarily let them go on, you know, for like an hour, you know, they just go on and on. At some point, you have to sort of, once again, diplomatically extricate yourself from that. But I don't think there's any problem with having, you know, a human interaction, you know, a human conversation on the service too. But once again, and I think different librarians are going to approach that differently, and it's almost a, you know, what are you comfortable with on a personal level, and it really runs the gamut. With the pranks, I for example, will see some librarians will code like, you know, half or 3/4 of their sessions as pranks, and other people will have like, you know, 1 or 2, you know, maybe, you know, a month. And I refuse to believe that all the pranks in the world are going to like 1 or 2 librarians. So I think it's once again that comfort level that you have with that sort of thing, your comfort level with the patrons, your comfort level with the technology, all those sorts of things sort of stack on top of each other. But on the other hand, if you're comfortable with that, you can have a conversation. Once again, the good transcripts are going to read like a conversation. And I would encourage you to go on, just sort of pick some transcripts at random and see how some other people handle it too. If you do log into the provider site, you can do a keyword search too. So if you want to do, you know, like search for like dating or, you know, relationships or boyfriend or something, there might be some transcripts that those words appear. Then you can sort of see how other people handled it too. And I highly encourage people to use those transcripts as a learning opportunity. Does that help at all? I mean,
Yeah, it does. I think it's good to know that a little bit of that is okay, because it is what I think a lot of us are used to doing in
Exactly.
our day-to-day work, but not knowing what the expectations are of, since it's not just CML, it is
Right.
Know It Now.
Right.
What the expectations of Know It Now.
Yeah, I would much prefer people have, you know, those human interactions and conversations and sort of, you know, so that people can have a positive experience with the service. And then once again, if they do have things that they need resources for, then they can come back, that they know they've at least had a positive experience with. That's where those board links come really handy. You know, if you have that sort of, if you're having just a conversation and somebody's going on about, you know, life and dating, it's like, no, I'm really sorry, you know, I really can't do it, but here's, you know, maybe not in that particular context, but if it was just a sort of conversational thing, at least you've provided them with a resource. Say, oh, you know, this might, you know, may take your mind off of things. You know, here's some, you know, some trivia sites and games and things like that. And it provides that sort of out for you, and also provides a positive interaction for the page. Yes?
Just to add to that, I think I had one a long time ago that I did refer to a crisis number, and I don't remember what it was, but it was, I think there's a difficulty there though, because, you know, if someone comes in the branch, you can read their body language, you can hear their tone of voice.
Yes.
And you're on a chat thing and it's really hard to tell, you know, is this a
Yep.
serious thing? Is it not? Is it a prank? Is it,
Yeah.
are they struggling with something, or are they just, is it the way you're reading it on the screen?
Right.
And so I would be really uncomfortable probably getting into opening a big can of worms and wondering like, okay, if I say something this, then suddenly I'm
Right.
now responsible for whatever else comes after that.
Right.
So I don't know, that's just something.
And I think that's perfectly fine. I think that the way you would handle it is going to be different than the way she would handle it, and probably different than I would handle it. But I think as long as you remember, and I think, you know, I mentioned that when our patrons come to us, I think they sometimes think that they're talking to a computer, and I think sometimes librarians get that impression as well, that there's, you know, canned greeting, link, goodbye, and that there's a you know, whether it's a prank or not, there's another human being on the other side of that chat as well. So how, you know, and there's going to be different ways of dealing with that, but I think that's a perfectly legitimate concern. The way you deal with one thing is not going to be the same as another. And that's one of the reasons, actually, I hate to give, blanket, here's the policy that everybody must follow. And you're gonna have some people that are gonna be like, oh, that's great, and some people are like, well, that's kind of constricting, that's kind of, I think understanding that different people are going to interact with people differently is a legitimate, viewpoint, so.
And I think for me, I would start asking a few questions to try to figure out what am I even dealing with.
Exactly, yep.
But that kind of leads into a different question I had regarding the SMS questions,
Yes.
Texting. I was on yesterday for an hour, and the only question I had came like 5 minutes before the end of the hour, and it was a text question, and it was something to the effect of, how does Ohio feel about gun control? Well,
Here's the answer in
so-
160
right,
characters
so
or less,
I'm sitting
yeah.
here thinking, okay, what do I do? How do I do this? So I accepted the thing, and then I look at it, and then I'm looking for something that would not be, because I figure anything I look at is going to be either biased pro or con.
Mhm.
So meanwhile, the clock's ticking away, and I'm trying to find something, and nothing I came across had any. It wasn't, neutral. It was obviously one side or the other. So then I kept thinking, I don't even know how to answer this question. And then I looked back, and it said they disconnected, which I didn't know didn't
Right.
really disconnect. So then I disconnected. So I think I screwed up the whole thing.
That is one thing, if you don't answer the text questions, they will continuously route until somebody answers it. And that's one thing with the text questions too, even if you get a text question, the message is thanks, reply to it, because if you don't, anything that's unanswered will continue to circulate.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for using our service, please come back if there's anything else we can help you with.
Okay, so I never got an answer. I never got them an answer.
Right.
And then I disconnected. So did I just close them out?
Yeah, you just close them out, it'll just circulate
Okay,
again
so
in I think it's like a half hour or something like that, it'll come through. One thing to keep in mind with SMS questions too, and you'll see it in the manual, but if you get them up, you'll see that there's like a patron number, 6589, whatever. If you click that, you're gonna see all their previous texts that they've sent. So if they send something like Ernest Hemingway, you're gonna like, well, what about Ernest Hemingway? You click their patron number, and there's probably going to be a series of texts that came through. It's like, I need books to read. And the librarian said, well, what kind of authors do you like? Ernest Hemingway. So that is an answer to a previous SMS that came through, but you can see that progression if you click on their patron number. And it sort of gives you more context.
So
whenever
what would
you
be
want
a
that.
good way to then, like, just that brief thing came in, how I feel about this, what would be a good way to handle it? Should I say, like, because in the SMS thing, I understood you weren't supposed to do a lot of back and forth. So
You can do back and forth. It's probably not best to do back and forth on the same question. You can do, what I usually recommend is having one reply to one text. But if you click on that patron number, even if you're not the librarian that sent the previous text, you can see all those other ones that went on. So you can sort of like jump into the conversation, add your line, and then go, if they text again, even if somebody different picks it up, they're going to at least see that previous progression and be able to
if I
jump
was
in.
the first person they contacted,
Yeah, that's fine.
But
If
would
they say, I need good books to read, I need a book to read,
right.
if you come back with, well, what kind of books do you like, or were you looking for fiction or nonfiction, send that to them. If they reply, it's gonna come up as a different text question. Somebody else might pick it up, but they're gonna be able to see what you asked them and reply if they say